Wedding planners of Reddit, what did your worst Bridezilla/Groomzilla do? Obligatory not a wedding planner, but my cousin's bride wouldn't let him take a picture with me by himself because she was jealous. I was 8 years old, their flower girl, and also his cousin. Edit, some more stories about Bridezilla for those curious. She got into a screaming match with her sil because she had a bigger engagement ring. Bridezilla was from New Orleans, wanted to have the wedding there. Insisted on having the wedding there even after it got fucked over by Hurricane Katrina. Finding a hotel was fucking delight according to my parents. Went on a tirade where she insulted pretty much our entire family. Made her husband skip our grandmother's funeral because she didn't like her anyway. Honestly, no one has forgiven him for going along with this. Cheated on my cousin with her high school sweetheart after my cousin paid for her lap band surgery. She was a fucking treat. Don't miss her at all. So how long did the marriage last? Longer than we thought. 6 years. Ironically, she was the one who cheated. I may be late to the party, but here goes. I'm not a wedding planner, but I do work in the industry, and my friend is the wedding planner I am telling this story about. He is a good-looking, straight male that has an amazing eye for design and detail. He can do everything from wedding dress design and execution, flowers, you name it. And his services are not cheap. He had a bride who called him up a few days before her wedding and told him she couldn't go through with the wedding because she was in love with someone else. The conversation went something like this. Bride, I can't marry him, I just don't love him anymore, I think I'm in love with someone else. Him, what do you mean you're in love with someone else? Your wedding is in 5 days. Bride, well, I'm in love with you. You just get me. I've never met anyone else like you. Him, do you know how much your parents are paying me to get you? She ended up getting married 5 days later and it was never mentioned again. Greater than him, do you know how much your parents are paying me to get you? This is fantastic. I worked in stationery design in the wedding industry a while back. Invites, wishing wells, menus, you name it. If it was wedding related and on paper, we sold it. Some of the customers we got were class act, I can tell you. The best/worst was a detailed consult with the bride and groom in regards to their invite design. Over the next 2 personal consults and many phone calls, I primarily dealt with the bride and her maid of honor together. After the last revision, the maid of honor came in to make a relatively major change, insisting that the bride wanted it that way. Idiot me made the change, and the order went to print. Well, turns out the bride and her maid of honor had a falling out and the maid wanted to get back at her ex-friend. Apparently she had approached several of the wedding services acting as an agent of the bride and pretty much fucked the whole event over. Edit, spelling. Edit 2, details. I remember our wedding planner, she had some other title, but coordinated the entire thing, told my wife these insane stories, completely unbelievable about Bridezillas. They were laughing, having fun about it. My wife swore she wouldn't be like that. And it was almost like the planner was trying to push it as far as she could, like she was trying to see just how much my wife would believe. After the first couple of stories I stopped laughing and tried to figure out what I was hearing. And there was some whopper at the end about the inn having to call he cops cause the bride was going to kill someone with the cake knife cause something was wrong with the icing or some stupid thing. Anyways, my wife walks out and I said something to the woman like, was that all bullshit or just most of it? And she laughed and said, I just tell them this fucked up shit so they don't get any crazy ideas. You'll thank me later. Greater than I just tell them this fucked up shit so they don't get any crazy ideas. You'll thank me later. If it wasn't for her, I would have never thought I would be able to kill someone with the cake knife. Thanks, wedding planner. I work as a hotel manager and we see bridezillas all the time. The worst was when a bride was so upset that she couldn't fit all of her bridesmaids on one shuttle back from the reception. They took 2 vans on a 10-minute trip back to the hotel and it only seats 12, that she tried to physically assault the driver. He left her on the side of the road when she tried to bite him. The kicker? When the groom found out and came to get her, she was acting so crazy he went to pick her up with her parents, and when they found her trudging back down the highway and heard her SHT attitude, they left her there too. X3. I've made a huge mistake. Not the official planner, but the Bridezilla pulled a love card and demanded her fiancé rent a massive equestrian park, with stables, vast fields, riding rings and the whole 9 yards, as if the $20,000 diamond ring wasn't enough. Only problem is, a massive rainstorm rolled in, and they only had one small building to cram into. Oh, and did I mention her several dogs? They all pissed and shat inside, all over the velvet carpet, one even shat while they were walking down the aisle. Edit, aisle. Don't marry a horse girl. A bride once called having a meltdown because her friend got engaged as well and was planning to get married in the same year as she was. Apparently it was her special year and not just a day. She threw a huge fit that this girl was only getting married to steal her thunder, yes, because no one else can have a life at the same time as you. Her friend's date wasn't even in the same month or season. Hers was in October and her friend's was in June. Brides sometimes don't think rationally. I have extensive experience as an events coordinator, including private events such as weddings. The worst I've personally witnessed had a groom's baby mama and ex-fiancé come to the reception uninvited. She grabbed the wedding cake, chucked it at the newlyweds, and began screaming how he was a deadbeat dad while she grabbed table wine bottles that she smashed on the ground. Everyone was stunned in shock at first, but the ex-fiancé was ultimately restrained by the groom's men. We called the police, and she was charged with assault with a weapon, from waving around a wine bottle and clocking a groomsman, and destruction of private property, both from the couple and the venue. What a charmer. In the end, the parents of the groom asked me to arrange a lovely, and secret, private dinner for the newlyweds and their bridal party to make up for the fiasco. TL, Dr. Psycho baby mama showed up, destroyed reception. So, not quite Bridezilla, but the groom dodged marrying one. How about Momzilla? I was the planner for a wedding and had been working with the bride and groom. A few months into planning, the groom's mom calls me to change the date of the wedding. I thought it was kind of weird and called the couple to confirm the change. Nope. Couple did not know anything about the date change and said to completely ignore the groom's mom and call them if she tried to get in contact. My sister fired her wedding planner and cancelled the rehearsal dinner. The photographer ended up stepping in and being the one to tell us when it was our turn to walk down the aisle, time to cut the cake, who should toast, etc., because my sister was toasted and the rest of us were just clueless. He was also a top-notch photographer despite all of the extra responsibility he took on in the wedding, and my husband and I were considering buying some of the photos he took of our family, but he ended up taking all of my sister's pictures off of his site because she was screen capping and sharing them with the watermark cropped out instead of buying them. So classless. Skeptical. Friend is a photographer. Does weddings. Got punched in the face by the groom because the groom decided that the photographer was taking too many photos of the bride. Weddings seem to bring out the worst in humanity. Well, not so much Bridezillas, but Momzillas. We've had twice in the last year weddings where it was clear to us that the things happening weren't because the bride wanted them, but because the bride's mothers felt they didn't have the wedding they wanted, so they were making all the big decisions for the bride. My mill and my mother tried this shit. My wife and I shut them both down and took over. Planned and executed the whole thing ourselves. Printing, decorations, the works. So my mother, upset that the whole day wasn't about her, outed my deeply in the closet gay brother at the wedding. Suddenly everyone was talking to her and about how she had this terrible burden to carry. So my wife and I encouraged them to leave the reception and help her, and kept our friends there to carry on the party. And my brother. Great party. Edit. Just a few other things. She forgets my birthday. She once gave me a gift of flip-flops, both left. From a dollar store. She rang me for New Year's, she left before Christmas. without telling me she was going. Also she rang when she was drunk. On the 3rd of January. Another story I have is I'm booking a wedding at my store. Young couple comes in and is picking stuff out. As usual the guy is pretty I don't care about things. Brides are never happy about this attitude. We go through for a bit, but when it comes to picking vest styles they get into a huge argument right in front of me and my colleague. Eventually the groom throws up his hands and says if we can't decide what colors then we just shouldn't get married. And walks out the door and leaves in his car. The girl starts crying in our store while we are just bewildered. My colleague asked if she was okay. She said she was having someone come pick her up and walked out the door crying. Never saw them again. Hands down a famous story in our store. That was a guy who had been looking for a way out and finally found it. Wedding DJ here and it wasn't the bride, this was a Groomzilla. For some reason the newlyweds decided to invite the bride's son's father. The dance floor cleared early and everyone was in the photo booth or outside smoking and drinking. Except the baby daddy and the groom. They're sitting at a table alone and appear to be having a raucous, laughing conversation. Only, oh shit no, their faces are getting angry looking. Groom now has his finger in the daddy's chest, he calls me dad now. I'm his father. Groom's men come running in to hold them both back. Groom flips the fucking table over. Bride is now in tears. Magical. My sister is getting married on Friday. She threw the ring at her fiancé yesterday and stormed off down the street barefoot because she asked him when he was picking up some decorations for the wedding and he asked when he should. I guess she took that as, I don't care about this wedding or you. Your decorations are stupid and you look fat. Not a wedding planner, but I make custom, one-of-a-kind, wedding dresses. One of my many notable interactions. A girl asked me if I would send her an $1,800 dress for free because I'm really pretty and I'll send you pictures of me wearing it at an event. I explained that while I did custom dresses, I couldn't possibly make one that would fit over such large balls. I briefly worked in event production/management. I had the pleasure of being at this event working a simple photo booth gig at a beautiful church. Weather was gorgeous, view was gorgeous, everything was great. The second I get there, one of our photographers comes up to me with a glass of champagne, chugs it, and says I've been here since 12 p.m, it was 8 p.m, in the distance, the bride was screaming and cussing up a storm. I talk to the photographer a bit longer and I find out, the bride punched her mother in the face during photos, the bride kicked out the groom's best man, and that she cussed out our videographer. This woman was going mad. Everything was cussing, screaming, yelling, scolding. I was working a photo booth. It's a simple gig. To put it in perspective, halfway through the reception the bride shouted for her pussy bitch husband to get our money's worth at the photo booth. Later that night I watched her shove a groomsman to the ground when he asked her to calm down. She eventually broke into tears randomly at some point. The woman tipped me $150. She was chill. Worked at a venue for wedding receptions. One time a groom wouldn't drink because he had severe Asian red face, so he avoided alcohol all his life. Bride convinced him to drink the champagne toast. Turns out he was severely allergic to alcohol, or something in alcoholic drinks. There were a few doctors at the reception arguing about it, and almost went into anaphylactic shock. The bride got into the back of the ambulance in her wedding dress. Doesn't sound like a bridezilla, she stood by him and was more concerned about his well-being than the wedding. And actually sounds like something that, after a bit of time had passed, would be a hilarious story for them. I was in a wedding and the groom freaked out at me. I'm a professional and have several pairs of nice fancy dress shoes. I'm on my feet a lot, so I spent money on them. He freaked out when he noticed I wasn't wearing the plastic rented shoes and his wife would be so pissed off at me. She said, "Oh, nice shoes. This seems a bit groomsmanzilla-ish to me rather than the groom being the issue." You know, when you agree to be in a wedding party that you're gonna be wearing clothes you probably wouldn't choose yourself, it's unlikely to be particularly flattering, for bridesmaids anyway, and regularly uncomfortable in some way, shoes for men and women included. I think it's rude to agree to be part of someone's wedding, knowing what they asked you to wear, and just ignore their wishes. If it's that big a deal to you, speak to them beforehand or don't agree to be in the wedding. I mean, it's good the wife didn't actually care, but I think you were the unreasonable one here. Matching with everyone else is kind of the point. This is a great thread. Not a wedding planner, but I love this one. Girl I went to HS with got engaged. Her parents offered her 3 options: $50,000 for a wedding, $50,000 for the down payment on a house, and a small, intimate wedding, or $25,000 for the wedding and $25,000 for a house. She chose the $50,000 wedding. Weeks before her wedding she told her parents that she was having second thoughts. Parents said, "Everyone has jitters. The wedding is paid for. You're getting married." She got married. The marriage lasted 2 months. She had been cheating on her fiancé/husband for over a year with a co-worker. It sauces my giblets when someone is given an amazing, gracious opportunity like that and they squander it in such a way. Not a planner, but I have a quick story about my sister's wedding. The guy she was marrying is a total D-bag. Complete grade A D-bag. I didn't approve it at all. My baby sister deserved much better. My sister wanted me to stand on his side of the ceremony because she had more bridesmaids than he had groomsmen, because he is a D-bag with no friends. Out of protest of the ceremony, I refused to dress in the same tuxedo/colors as the other groomsmen. I was going to dress all black. Black suit, black tie, black collared shirt. A month before the wedding, he broke up with her, thank the Lord. It cost my mom lots of money because the venue refused to give back any of the deposit on the venue. My sister still has her wedding dress sitting in her closet. The guy is now in jail for domestic violence, against another woman, not my sister. Not a wedding planner, but I was helping out with my cousin's wedding. She threw a pair of ~heels in the wedding planter's face because she got the off-white Christian Louboutins and she wanted the cream ones. She also threw bottles of champagne, yelled at the servers and slapped her bridesmaids. Not surprisingly, the marriage didn't last. Pair of hairs? Like hares/rabbits. Sucks about the wedding planter too. Not a wedding planner, but gained some really valuable insight. My friend got married this year and she is about as opposite of a bridezilla as they come. But when planning her wedding she found that every single person in her family had opinions to offer on every little detail. For things that were important to her, like the table settings, she would have to stand her ground, which resulted in offending 2 aunts and making grandma cry because she wanted to stick to the centerpieces she already bought. With other things, she simply gave up and told her mom that her aunt could pick out other details just to keep the peace. After months of needing to be really assertive and frustrated, she said she thought that many women are probably inaccurately labeled bridezillas as a reaction to the situation of always needing to assert and reassert their wishes in a situation where they are offered 10 different opinions. Blew my mind a little bit. Edit, thank you for the gold, kind stranger. I'm watching a shit show unfold as we speak. The wedding isn't until November, but the bride is already the most zilla of anything I've ever encountered. Hailing from the great Midwest, this bride has decided that everyone needs to fly down to New Orleans for the wedding. Her soon-to-be in-laws are a pretty large family, but only the guys are allowed to be in the wedding. The women are just supposed to hang out and do nothing while the wedding party parades around town all week. Not a huge deal, but still annoying to pay for a trip you can't even spend with your whole family. But here's where it gets good. The bride emailed the dress specifications to all the ladies. Blush/champagne/gold/taupe family. Floor length dress. Can be shimmery/sparkly/sequined. Column/empire waist/sheath shape, no mermaid style. No white/grey/ivory/silver. No color blocking. Try to stay away from lace. See bottom of email for inspiration photos. Should I note that these women are not in her wedding party at all, but guests? Edit, date. To the contrary, I was a videographer for 10 years / more than 300 weddings and only had one Bridezilla. Leslie hated everybody, absolutely everybody. Groom, groomsmen, bridesmaids, parents, his and hers, priest, caterer, photographer, everybody except me. I have no idea why. To top it off, I got tons of referrals from her. So, Leslie, thank you very much, your video guy from 25 years ago. Wedding photographer here. Usually planners and photographers don't enjoy one another all that much given their need to rush our images. In the case of a Bridezilla, however, the cringe is hard enough to bring us together. As a photographer that has been brought in last minute for a few weddings, a well-organized planner is a godsend. I had a bride announce her pregnancy at the reception, and proceeded to get trashed. The groom and her parents kept taking drinks out of her hand and she kept slurring "yeah, like I'm not going to drink at my own wedding." I finally convinced her to switch to vodka sodas so she wouldn't stain her dress, and she drank club soda for the rest of the night and was none the wiser. Another bride poured a gravy boat full of A1, don't ask, all over a guest who wore a white pantsuit to the wedding, but that one was sort of funny and the pantsuit lady sort of deserved it. I'm a wedding photographer. This one self-absorbed bitch sat in her suite making her guests sit outside in the sun for a full hour while she fussed with her makeup and jewelry, which had already been done for some time. She wrote her vows during this time an hour after the service was supposed to have started. When her aunt came in and gently reminded her that she was holding everyone up, she threw a mini tantrum and complained, "It's my day and everyone's forgetting it's supposed to be about me." When she finally deigned to appear, her brother, a groomsman, passed out from heat exhaustion. The officiant leaned in, asked if she wanted to take a break while he was tended to, and she said, "Nah, just keep going, he's fine." At the end, as she's recessing down the aisle, you could see the ambulance arriving in the background. Her vows, by the way, were awful, and sounded like they'd been thrown together just minutes beforehand. Because, of course, they had been. Not a planner but a photographer. Knew a guy from Amsterdam. His GF was a bridesmaid for a wedding. Poor. And figured I could use some karma doing free wedding photos for a friend. I hadn't met the groom or the bride prior to driving up. I mean, it's free photos, I'll give them the film except for a couple of portfolio shots when I soup them. Not really investing a lot of time money into this freebie. Well, bridesmaid and bride get into a name-calling spat and she leaves. Friend looks at me. Sighs. Says he is sorry but he leaves with her. I'm now there at a freebie wedding with a bride I don't even know the name of. I don't do any weddings anymore. I'm planning my own wedding right now and no one is allowing me to be chill about it. I don't give a fuck about the knife we cut the cake with, chair covers, linen colors. Do I have ideas of how I'd like my wedding to go? Sure. I want to marry my fiancé, have a delicious meal, cause I will be a rose puddingzilla if I go 8 hours without eating, believe that, drink delicious cocktails / beer and have a nice time. Speeches, light dancing, thanks for coming, then we go home. All the choices are debilitating and certain vendors, family members, friends, bridal party, etc. suffocate you about the choices you do end up making. Even stupid shit like the color scheme or what type of suit or tux the groom will be wearing. When I get overwhelmed I remind myself that even if everything goes wrong, we'll be married at the end of the day, which is the whole point. My wedding theme is, be lucky I'm not eloping. My sister handed us all itineraries the week before that we had to learn so we knew when to get dressed, when to take pictures, when to eat. I asked her if I had permission to shit anywhere in this time schedule. I thought it was at least worth a chuckle. Both of my sisters glared at me, that wins. Tough crowd with those two. Not a wedding planner, but I distinctly remember my 5th grade teacher was getting married the summer after that particular school year. Every day we would do word problems about weddings, write stories from the perspective of wedding guests, do projects where we had to do wedding-based shit. Without even knowing the term Bridezilla, I knew that's exactly what she was. Not a coordinator but worked at a venue that had weddings every weekend. It was located about 15 minutes from a large international airport, which was very convenient for guests but a big problem for one of the brides. She told the coordinator to make sure that no flights would be passing overhead during her ceremony. Okay, so, we'll just call every airline and have them delay all flights for you, crazy. I'm a pastry cook. Seriously had a bride freak the fuck out that another bride had a tasting at the same time at a different table with another pastry cook, was using blush pink in her wedding too. Blush pink was the it color for weddings that year. Most weddings had blush pink. So she freaks out that the other bride is daring to use her color. Pouts during her tasting and just kept repeating over and over, I don't even like cake. I hate cake. You like cake? Stomps out of her tasting. Her future groom really enjoyed the tasting and admitted she gets annoyed when people copy her style. Is Groomzilla a thing? My girlfriend used to work at a winery that held weddings. Yes, they are a thing. She said they're worse to handle because for a bride, everyone will swarm in to help her because it's, you know, the bride. If it's the groom, then nobody is prepared to calm him down, so he's more likely to remain insane instead of calming down. Granted, this is just one person's anecdotal experience, so take that with a grain of salt. Stories like these blow my mind, such first world problem bullshit. Honestly, it's what drove me out of event planning altogether. I got to the point where it was hard for me to even feign sympathy for brides who did things like fire their DJs via text at 10 p.m. the night before their wedding day and then get fussy with me because I can't plug their iPhone into a speaker system she didn't have access to because she didn't pay for it. I'm not a wedding planner, but I work closely with brides and grooms. I work in the vintage diamond ring business. I'll never forget working with one amazing groom. He spent a small fortune on a gorgeous Victorian engagement ring. It was one of the most beautiful rings I had ever seen. I was super excited about the proposal. I of course wouldn't be there to see it. Imagine my shock when I received a call from the groom the next day. She apparently hated the ring and threw a fit because, her words, he bought her a used ring from a garage sale. The ring was from one of the best vintage jewelry stores in the United States and cost $94,000. X was a wedding planner. Grandma died at a wedding. They kept in the closet until the ceremony was over because it really didn't make sense to have two tragedies in one day. Frown. Obligatory. Not a wedding planner, but an event DJ which includes weddings. I didn't have a Bridezilla but I have had Momzillas before. Typically wanting to go against what the bride and groom said they wanted to have played for things. I always go with what the bride and groom and I have discussed and have in writing for things like first dances, blah blah blah. Even if they're not the ones paying me, it's their day, not mom's or dad's. I really don't understand what makes them think they have the right to do that. Edit, I can't spells good. I got a quickie. I directed weddings for 3 years at a military school when I was a cadet. One time in particular, I was to direct the wedding for a campus-wide infamous a whole army teacher, who was only a first lieutenant. I had told him and his groomsmen the night before the wedding that they are not allowed to drink or pregame in the church where they were getting married. Well, this entitled jerk-off and his groomsmen did anyway, and when I approached him about it, he got all red-faced, and bitched about not being treated respectfully with fact that he's an officer, yada yada yada. Plus, he didn't listen to hardly any of my directions, he was constantly chatting during the rehearsal, and always had lip every time I tried to hurry him and his party to their spots. Oh, and he didn't pay his 8-man sword arch the dollar that they were promised. I feel angry typing this whole story into my computer. So years ago, my friend's sister gets married. Her dad is totally old world German, nobody questions father. The bride wanted a small hassle-free wedding, but dear old dad, 1. Said he wanted a blowout wedding, too. Handed his daughter a list of over 200 guests he expected to be invited, and 3. Refused to pay for any of it. Long story short, it was an epic disaster, with the parents micromanaging everything, while at the same time not actually helping with anything. Thanks to a last-minute bankruptcy, the bride had to arrange a new caterer at 11 p.m. the night before the wedding. At the time she took her vows, she hadn't slept in around 48 hours, and literally does not remember any part of her wedding day. When her sister, my friend, got married, she arranged a small wedding and reception, and the only decision she allowed dear old dad to make was whether to attend or not. He did. Also not a wedding planner. Working at a venue for a 2-day wedding, they'd basically rented out an entire hotel, and they had ordered a lot of food with catering. Way more than they would ever eat over those 2 days. The bride, and her mother, seemingly worked in shifts to ensure that none of the food that was taken away or uneaten could go to the staff. She would follow waiters taking away trays to the kitchen and watch as we put them into storage. At the end of the whole event, she ordered the staff to throw away all the remaining food. We're talking about a lot, at least £4,000 worth, whilst she watched. I don't ever remember seeing the groom. I worked a wedding venue for 2 years, and my GF is a destination planner. Her weddings cost generally in the 80k plus budget. So I've seen weddings from shotgun you got my daughter pregnant to 1% weddings. Worst had to be the bride's dad, who was absolutely plastered, blew a .21 into a breathalyzer, I caught doing lines of coke in the bathroom. Told me to get the fuck out. He then ran downstairs to call his other daughter a bitch and made her cry. Then ran outside and got in his car and drive home after literally everyone told him not to, since he already had a DUI. A few years ago, my sister and I had a falling out. It happened in September. In January, my mom tells me that my sister got engaged and she wanted me to plan the wedding. I was still pissed at her, but I figured why not? I'm gay and can throw a mean party. Problem was, she wanted to get married on April 2nd. For a while, I was told she wanted to do it in San Antonio. Once I realized that just wasn't doable, I suggested Vegas and she loved it. I planned and paid for the entire wedding, dress included, and never got a phone call or an email saying thank you. A day before I was set to fly to Vegas, I decided fuck her and just didn't go. This was in 2012 and I still haven't talked to her. I was the man of honor at my best friend's wedding. Through her I became really good friends with the groom as well. I didn't care to be the third wheel in that friendship because we had some really awesome and wonderful times. Weeks away from the wedding date, my best friend decided to go to Philly out on a whim, a mini vacation I recall her describing it, while I tightened up the particulars of their big day. She came back fresher than a daisy. As the date drew nearer, she gave me access to her phone and other accounts since her plate was getting really full. I then became the go-to contact for all the vendors. I would get these random texts from an unknown number and I investigated further. As it turns out, it was an ex-BF whom she met up and slept around with on her mini vacay in Philly. I was assigned witness to their marriage 3 years ago and still feel so sick about it. To this day, the groom has no clue and would be so devastated if he finds out. Me and my now ex-best friend don't speak because of this. Not me, but this happened to a co-worker who used to work at a bridal store. Bridezilla came in with fiancé, and flipped shit about how the bridesmaid dresses weren't the exact same color as the tablecloths they had picked out, and apparently the store had stressed to her that the photo online wasn't totally accurate. She ignored them and ordered that color anyway. In the middle of her scream fest, the fiancé held up his hand and said, "Stop." Bridezilla stopped dead. You made the photographer cry, you screamed at the caterer, and, insert another example here. She starts screaming at him too and he just sat there, calm and patient, and then he said, "Give me the ring." What? I've had enough. Give me the ring. She chucked the ring at him, he calmly picked it up and walked out, leaving her there like a complete fool. Have worked in event planning, and unfortunately spent about 6 months helping out our social events team. My worst was helping to plan a wedding reception for a woman who is a corporate event planner herself. The level of anal and never-ending attempts to haggle, and complain, and make noise about everything was the worst. The whole office knew about her, and we'd share updates about her mind-numbing saga each time she reached out. Let me guess, that was Sam? Yup. Edit, I forgot about the woman who cancelled her wedding after not liking the presentation of the Caesar salad. Served as spears rather than chopped, though in later conversation she admitted that she didn't want to spend the money. I work at a venue that has 3 weddings a week, so I've literally been to hundreds of weddings. The worst bridezilla I've had was bitching out every non-guest in the building the entire night. The groom looked terrified. She ended up getting incredibly trashed, had a shouting fight with the mother of the groom, and puked on my shoes. It was great. I'm gonna pop in on a side note and say that, if you're gonna have a problem with someone, the mother of the groom and father of the bride are the most troublesome usually. Hearing a groom yell at his momzilla to STFU is mildly entertaining though. Edit, clarification. This is fucked up and I can't believe I'm sharing it, but the bridezilla in this story insisted on wearing the garter from her mother's wedding. I don't get the whole garter tradition, but whatever, bridezilla wanted to wear her mom's garter. Here's the problem, mom was married, divorced, then remarried and had a daughter, Bridezilla. The garter Bridezilla wanted to wear was from the first marriage. Not the marriage to her own dad, who her mom is still happily married to. The father was extremely hurt and upset by this. Not to mention confused. His protests were ignored. Also, the bride thinks she's too good for her dad's side of the family. So they weren't invited under the pretense of it being too expensive. She just ignored her dad when he repeatedly offered to pay for them to come. He pointed out he was already paying for everything else, so it couldn't possibly be a money issue for her. Poor guy. Not a wedding planner but a friend's wedding my wife and I went to was going well. Then her mom pipes up at the reception. I didn't think so many chinks would show up. She got many glares that night, considering the groom's family is all Asian, not Chinese, Filipino I think. For whatever reason she was oblivious to the fact my wife is half Korean, South before the Pyongyang jokes come lol. Liked what you saw? Hit like, subscribe and the bell icon for more crazy Reddit content.